Hello, I'm Tara Brabazon. I'm the Dean of Graduate Research at Flinders University, and welcome to Vlog 159, Multidisciplinarity. Ooh. Now this vlog is the reason why I separated out these four terms. I very easily could have put a vlog together with all the different terms in it and have them play. But the reason why I wanted the terms separate is because the literature engaging with multidisciplinarity is very, very uneven. There's a very strong stream from medicine, nursing and allied health that's going to really help us in our work today. But there's also some very, very poor literature in this field that aligns and overlaps really interdisciplinarity and multidisciplinarity, suggesting that they are interchangeable. Now, nothing could be further from the truth. So I wanted to make sure everything was nice and separate, nice and clean, so that multidisciplinarity got its day in the sun. Because I think particularly this is going to be the paradigm, the trope, the concept to watch. Multidisciplinarity is very different when compared to the other four terms we're exploring. It has very different objectives. It's about the aggregation of different disciplines. So hold on to that word, aggregation. If you will, it's about two or more disciplines coexisting, cooperating and associating. These disciplines are not aggregating. So in my head, when I was visualizing multidisciplinarity, I thought of the disciplines as parallel lines leading to a goal or a problem or a solution at the end. So what happens is each of those disciplines continue their methods, their ontologies, their outcomes, their results, as they always do. So the disciplinary boundaries and parameters are maintained and respected within those parallel lines. But multiple disciplines come together to offer a solution. That's the point of multidisciplinarity. All these disciplines arrive intact to a table to solve a problem. Now, very often in health and allied health, we discuss multidisciplinary teams. Very common in health, very common in clinical environments, but we also see it in education and we also see it in social policy. So multidisciplinarity deploys the strengths of already existing disciplines, and it uses multiple disciplines and their strengths to come up with the best solution to a problem. So there is not integration here. There is not integration. Unlike interdisciplinarity, there is no synthesis. Unlike transdisciplinarity, we have no transcendence of disciplinary boundaries. Everything stays cool within its parameters. So instead, multidisciplinarity affirms teamwork, collaboration. That's really important. And it uses different perspectives on problems to reach a consensus. So here are all these ways of thinking, and they explore the same problem to come up with the best solution. How fantastic is this? So put another way, interdisciplinarity is interactive, transdisciplinarity is holistic, but multidisciplinarity is additive. Additive. So experts in different disciplines come together to develop at the end a common framework to solve a problem. It's coordinated though, so it's a way of managing time, managing problems, managing teams. It is additive. It's an additive management model in clinical cases. It's an additive model in thinking about research. So what I'm going to do, just to make it all very clear at the start, is I'm going to provide an example from a clinical environment. So this is how multidisciplinarity and a multidisciplinary team operates within a clinical area. So let's think about breast cancer treatment. Incredibly complicated area. So what is a multidisciplinary care team for breast cancer? Well, the team come together. We've got surgery, medical oncology, we've got radiation oncology, we've got a breast care nurse, we've got a general practitioner to coordinate the care outside of the hospital environment. We often have a physiotherapist, perhaps a psychologist, a social worker, perhaps palliative care, but also community health professionals, also social workers. Did I say social workers? Very important. So each of these disciplines come together, but they maintain their expertise. So a surgeon is not going to tell a social worker how to do their business, and vice versa, right? So they express their expertise in that case to gain consensus about care management and about the best way to manage this case for the patient. Okay, so we need to solve a problem for a patient, and a multidisciplinary team is summoned. Each offer a different perspective, a different view to create the best result. Great, so that's a model from the clinical environment. How does that operate in more diverse research environments? So what does multidisciplinary research, also outside of health, look like? Well, it takes the theories and the approaches from particular disciplines and uses them as applied within that discipline. So there's no transdisciplinarity here. It uses the terms and the theories and the methods as it exists in the discipline. So the discipline remains intact. The discipline maintains integrity. So what is the goal of this modelling research? What are we trying to achieve? Well, what's happening is those different scholarly streams are offering a solution to a problem, but with multidisciplinary goals. So importantly, no new theories, no new knowledge is created as such with multidisciplinarity, because the research simply progresses during the normal grooves. But comparison improves the results and enables the achievement of a goal. So it creates an additive effect to create a good, solid outcome. Therefore, the challenge in multidisciplinary approaches, and this I always find interesting, the challenge is, okay, so all those disciplines are in operation and they reach what each of them think is their best case, their best result, right? So that's great, we're there. Now the challenge in multidisciplinary approaches is, how do colleagues, how do researchers translate their research and talk together to create the best outcome? Because they stay in the parallel lines, and then when everyone has their best outcome in this situation, then we've got to reach consensus. So that requires a movement outside of occupational boundaries. So what's required in these cases is incredibly high-level communication skills, and also very high information literacy skills. So this is my result, that's your result, that's your result, that's your result. We have to communicate between our disciplines now to find the best outcome in terms of solving a research problem, or indeed in terms of caring for a patient. But of course, not surprisingly, and why this is such an important blog, is funders, funding sources love multidisciplinarity. Obviously they do, because they're getting an efficient solution to their problem. Here is a social problem, here is a clinical problem, here is a health problem. How do we solve it? So let's get some really, really bright people together to give us their best go, let them talk about it and come up with a great outcome for us. Needless to say, layers of government love multidisciplinarity. So yes, while medicine and health still dominate these approaches, there's some very interesting emerging areas of multidisciplinarity. I've used a few of them, and you'll see in the areas that I've used it, but obviously space is the biggie. Space studies is going to be, I think, the big multidisciplinary gig that we're going to be doing in the next 5 to 10 years. But also transportation, so solving transportation problems, and this is where I've used some of the multidisciplinary approaches, thinking about city imaging and regional development. That often requires multidisciplinarity to function, but also anything really to do with the environment these days, and of course just about anything to do with energy and energy supply, and energy, I'm going to use the word security. Therefore, multidisciplinarity took its leadership from health, from the clinical environment, and it's now expanding far beyond it. And as I've said, if you're working with government now have worked out this is the most efficient way in terms of bang for your buck, spending money to solve a problem. A multidisciplinary team can deliver that. So please remember, in this particular term, this concept, this way of thinking, the disciplines do not interact and they do not change. They create that cumulative, additive approach to knowledge to create complexity. So we've got great complexity and then consensus at the end. Complexity, consensus. So what is the best resolution from this case? So the goal of multidisciplinary approaches is to show that any issue, any problem has many lenses that can apply to it. Different disciplines, different ways of knowing, different ways of thinking. So multidisciplinarity is really, really hard to do. It's very hard to do because it relies on a scholar in each of their disciplines not only holding profound expertise, but then also intellectual generosity. So saying, I know this area very well and that's my solution, but you know what, I'm going to be intellectually generous and look at what your approach does, and we're going to communicate between us to work out what is the best outcome. So again, very complicated way of thinking. The strengths and the weaknesses of the approach are obviously keeping those approaches separate, but it is valuable when we're thinking about consensus at the end. It's also not lazy. Some interdisciplinarity can be lazy, and you know I love it, I base my career on it, but some interdisciplinarity can be lazy because it's simply slamming terms together and hoping for the best. Multidisciplinarity does that really heavy lifting to get to that consensus. So multidisciplinary approaches are difficult, and yes, they're also incredibly subtle. And they show what each discipline can reveal in terms of methods, in terms of data sets, in terms of making the argument. So remember, interdisciplinarity is about the blend to create something new. Multidisciplinarity doesn't, but it does require control, demonstrating independently what these disciplines can contribute to solve a problem. It is problem solving focused. Now, multidisciplinarity works incredibly well in the science disciplines, where each of the science disciplines can continue to use their methodologies in parallel lines. That's great. And therefore create cooperation at the end between the science disciplines. So this is what Augsburg described as, and I love this quote, mutual and cumulative, but not interactive. Mutual and cumulative, but not interactive. End of quote. What's the problem? Well, there is a problem. We also have to recognise the issue of power when we're thinking about multidisciplinarity. And probably as an example, I'm going to use the best one, which is, of course, nursing. An enormous hello to all my wonderful students and colleagues in nursing at Flinders University and around the world. You are very precious to me. Now, nursing, when we're dealing with the health environment, is always included in these multidisciplinary teams. You know, physiotherapy sometimes is, speech pathology sometimes is, occupational sometimes is. So the allied health professions are often part of this story. But we can't have a blind spot to power, because okay, so we've got a health team, a health multidisciplinary team. I'm going to say it, the surgeons tend to dominate because the disciplines have integrity and separation. The power that those disciplines have when you're coming to the table is sustained through this process. So allied health in particular is often configured as supportive disciplines. So the way that power operates around a multidisciplinary team really has to be checked. And is a surgeon more important than a physiotherapist? I don't think so. And by multidisciplinarity, everything should have integrity and equal weight coming to consensus. So be aware that when we're dealing with multidisciplinarity, the matter of power and the power held by those disciplines in a hierarchy needs to be addressed and talked about overtly. The final bit of this gig today is I wanted to log that this is an area of growth. This is an area I want you to know about and I want you to think about in all sorts of different fields. So for example, Elsevier has a brand new book series called Studies in Multidisciplinarity. Now this book series is looking tremendous. My favourite is Reviving the Living. What an amazing book this is. Reviving the Living by Jan Newman. So this is a series to watch. So if this is a thing for you, watch that Elsevier series. But also, as you can see, it's booming and expanding far beyond allied health. Yes, we need to acknowledge, though, in the way in which this paradigm has formed, we have incredible legacy from our health colleagues. So we need to thank our health colleagues for creating this remarkable paradigm. And we can all learn from it. I think what we learn from multidisciplinarity is the importance of the integrity of the disciplines, and the many meanings of the word integrity, by the way, but the integrity of the disciplines, and how we all gain as scholars, as citizens, from affirming the value of consensus. And I think this creates intellectual generosity, but wow, it also creates some fantastic research. I wish you love, light, and peace. Tea out.